In November 2022, one of the largest financial frauds in modern history unraveled in real time, on social media, in front of millions of people watching. $8 billion. Gone. Customers across the world suddenly couldn't access their money. A company worth $32 billion collapsed in 72 hours. And the man at the center of it all, a 29-year-old in cargo shorts and a curly halo of hair, who had positioned himself as the savior of crypto, as an effective altruist, as a new kind of billionaire who was going to give it all away, was sitting in his Bahamas penthouse, watching it all burn down. His name was Sam Bankman-Fried. He ran a cryptocurrency exchange called FTX, and what he actually did with his customers' money is one of the most brazen acts of financial fraud the world has ever seen. To understand how Sam Bankman-Fried pulled off an $8 billion fraud, you have to understand how he made himself impossible to doubt. He didn't look like a fraudster. He didn't act like one. He drove a Toyota Corolla. He slept on a beanbag in his office. He wore the same cargo shorts every day. He talked openly about giving away his entire fortune. He built a public persona so carefully constructed around humility and altruism that journalists, politicians, and investors competed with each other to be seen standing next to him. Sam Bankman-Fried, known everywhere as SBF, was born in 1992 to two Stanford law professors. He studied physics at MIT, graduated in 2014, and took a job at a trading firm called Jane Street Capital, where he learned to think about financial markets in pure mathematical terms: probabilities, expected value, arbitrage opportunities. He was good at it. Exceptionally good. In 2017, while still in his mid-20s, he noticed something strange in the emerging cryptocurrency markets. Bitcoin was trading at different prices on different exchanges in different countries. In the United States, it might be worth $10,000. In Japan, it was selling for $11,000. If you could buy in one place and sell in another fast enough, a strategy called arbitrage, you could print money. SBF did exactly that, reportedly making millions in profits in a matter of weeks. That success funded his next move. In 2019, he founded Alameda Research, a quantitative crypto trading firm. It was profitable almost immediately. Then, also in 2019, he founded FTX, a cryptocurrency exchange where retail customers and institutional investors could buy, sell, and store digital assets. FTX was slick, professional, and fast. It had celebrity endorsements from Tom Brady, Gisele Bündchen, and Steph Curry. It sponsored a major basketball arena. It ran Super Bowl ads. It had a legitimate-looking compliance team, audited financial statements, and a reputation for being the responsible adult in a chaotic crypto industry. By 2021, FTX was valued at $18 billion. By early 2022, that valuation had climbed to $32 billion. SBF was worth an estimated $26 billion on paper, making him one of the youngest billionaires on the planet. He gave tens of millions to political causes. He testified before Congress about crypto regulation. Politicians posed for photos with him. Journalists wrote glowing profiles. He was, by every external measure, a success story for the ages. None of it was. Here is what the public didn't know, and what investigators would later piece together, piece by painstaking piece. From the very beginning, FTX and Alameda Research were not two separate independent companies. They were one operation with a shared pool of customer money that Sam Bankman-Fried treated as his personal bank account. When customers deposited money into FTX, dollars, euros, Bitcoin, Ethereum, they believed it was being held safely in custody, ready to be withdrawn whenever they wanted. That is what exchanges are supposed to do. That is what FTX told regulators, investors, and customers it was doing. It wasn't. Instead, customer funds were being quietly transferred from FTX to Alameda Research. Alameda would then use that money to make speculative trades, take enormous leveraged positions in volatile crypto assets, and fund a lifestyle of staggering excess. SBF and his inner circle bought luxury real estate in the Bahamas worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They made political donations. They invested in other companies. They threw parties. They lost money on bad trades and simply took more customer funds to cover the losses. The mechanism that made this possible was a secret backdoor built into FTX's own accounting software. Alameda Research had a special account on the FTX platform that had effectively no withdrawal limits and no margin call triggers, meaning it could hold a negative balance of billions of dollars without the system flagging it or automatically liquidating positions. Every other customer on FTX had strict risk controls. Alameda had none. It could borrow unlimited amounts from the customer pool without restriction, without oversight, and without detection. This was not a mistake. This was not a bug in the system. According to prosecutors, this backdoor was deliberately built in at SBF's direction, specifically to give Alameda access to customer funds without detection. By mid-2022, Alameda Research owed FTX's customer pool approximately $8 billion, a hole that had been growing for years. The customers who thought their money was sitting safely in their accounts had no idea it had been loaned to a hedge fund that had already lost most of it. For a while, the scheme worked because crypto markets were going up. Rising asset prices masked the losses. But in May 2022, the crypto market began to collapse. Terra Luna, a major crypto token, imploded almost overnight, wiping out billions across the industry. Alameda took catastrophic losses. The $8 billion hole got deeper. By the autumn of 2022, the situation at FTX and Alameda was desperate. The hole in customer funds had grown to a size that was almost impossible to conceal. SBF began frantically seeking emergency investment, reaching out to potential investors and asking for capital injections of $8 billion, a number that should have been a screaming red flag to anyone who heard it. No legitimate exchange needs emergency capital to simply return customer deposits. Then, on November 2nd, 2022, a leaked document changed everything. CoinDesk, a crypto news publication, published a story revealing that Alameda Research's balance sheet was largely made up of FTT, FTX's own proprietary token. In other words, Alameda's main asset was a token that FTX itself had created out of thin air. It was circular, self-referential, and in any serious financial analysis, essentially worthless as a real asset. The market reacted immediately. FTT began to drop in price. Then Changpeng Zhao, the CEO of Binance, FTX's largest competitor, announced publicly that Binance would be selling its entire FTT holdings, worth approximately $500 million. The announcement was devastating. FTT's price collapsed, and as it did, customers began rushing to withdraw their money from FTX. In a single day, customers tried to withdraw $6 billion from FTX. FTX could not process the withdrawals. It didn't have the money. Within days, FTX froze all customer withdrawals. On November 11th, 2022, just 9 days after the CoinDesk article, FTX filed for bankruptcy. $32 billion in value had evaporated in under 2 weeks. 1 million customers around the world were locked out of their accounts. SBF resigned as CEO and was replaced by John J. Ray III, the same restructuring specialist who had been brought in to clean up Enron. Ray's assessment of FTX was blunt and historic. He had never, he said, in over 40 years of legal and restructuring work, seen such a complete failure of corporate controls or such an absence of trustworthy financial information. FTX had no accounting department, no independent board, no proper record of which assets it actually owned. Hundreds of millions of dollars had been spent on real estate and personal expenses that were simply logged under miscellaneous. The company had been run, in Ray's words, by a small group of inexperienced and unsophisticated individuals. $8 billion in customer funds. Gone. In the days after FTX's collapse, SBF did something extraordinary. Rather than going silent, he went on a media tour. He gave interviews. He posted threads on Twitter. He appeared on stage at a major financial conference, seemingly unable to fully grasp that the story he was telling, that this was all a terrible mistake, a failure of risk management, a series of accidents, wasn't working. Journalists pushed back. Prosecutors were watching. On December 12, 2022, just 1 month after FTX's collapse, Sam Bankman-Fried was arrested at his home in the Bahamas by Bahamian authorities at the request of the U.S. government. He was extradited to the United States and released on a $25 million bail package, placed under house arrest at his parents' home in California. The indictment was extensive. SBF was charged with 7 counts of fraud and conspiracy: wire fraud, securities fraud, commodities fraud, and money laundering. The government's case was built on testimony from his closest collaborators: Caroline Ellison, the CEO of Alameda Research and SBF's former girlfriend; Gary Wang, FTX's co-founder and chief technology officer; and Nishad Singh, FTX's director of engineering. All 3 had pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate fully with prosecutors. They described in precise detail how the scheme worked: the backdoor account, the transfers of customer funds, the deliberate concealment, the lies told to investors and regulators. The inner circle had turned, and they had receipts. The trial of Sam Bankman-Fried began on October 3, 2023, in federal court in New York. It lasted 4 weeks. The government presented a systematic, methodical case built on documents, wire transfers, and the damning testimony of people who had been inside the room when the decisions were made. Caroline Ellison testified that SBF had personally directed her to use customer funds for Alameda's trading operations and to conceal the losses from investors and the public. She described spreadsheets, documents kept hidden from almost everyone outside the inner circle, that showed the true scale of the fraud in black and white. Gary Wang testified about the backdoor code he had written into FTX's systems at SBF's direction, the specific lines of software that gave Alameda unlimited, invisible access to customer deposits. He explained exactly how it worked, how it had been concealed, and when he had first been told to build it. SBF took the stand in his own defense. He claimed he hadn't known the full extent of what was happening. He blamed others. He described himself as overwhelmed, operating under impossible pressure, making mistakes. He said he had relied on advisors who had failed him. He said he hadn't understood the risk. The jury did not believe him. On November 2, 2023, exactly 1 year after the CoinDesk article that had triggered the collapse, the jury returned its verdict after just 4 hours of deliberation. Guilty on all 7 counts, every single charge. On March 28, 2024, Sam Bankman-Fried was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, one of the longest sentences ever handed down for financial fraud in United States history. Judge Lewis Kaplan, delivering the sentence, said there was a real risk that SBF would commit fraud again if given the opportunity. His former colleagues received lighter sentences in recognition of their cooperation with prosecutors. Caroline Ellison was sentenced to 2 years. Gary Wang received no prison time. Nishad Singh received no prison time. The political donations SBF had made were clawed back. The Bahamas real estate portfolio was liquidated. The celebrity endorsers, who had promoted FTX to millions of ordinary investors, faced civil lawsuits from victims. The arena in Miami was renamed. The Super Bowl ads disappeared from the internet. The glowing magazine profiles sat online like documents from another reality. For the more than 1 million customers who had trusted FTX with their money, the bankruptcy process began the long and painful work of attempting to recover what remained. Some would eventually receive significant portions of their original deposits back, but years later, after years of legal proceedings, uncertainty, and loss. Sam Bankman-Fried built one of the most convincing illusions in the history of finance. He understood that in the modern world, packaging often matters more than the product. If you look humble enough, talk about giving enough, surround yourself with enough credibility, and move fast enough, people will believe almost anything. He fooled investors who managed hundreds of billions of dollars. He fooled journalists at the world's most respected publications. He fooled regulators. He fooled politicians. He fooled 1 million ordinary people who trusted him with their savings. The lesson of FTX is not really about cryptocurrency. It is about what happens when accountability disappears, when a single person controls enormous amounts of other people's money with no oversight, no independent verification, and no consequences for lying. That combination has produced catastrophic fraud
every single time it has occurred in financial history. From Enron to Madoff to Theranos to FTX. The names change, the mechanism never does. The money is mostly gone. The customers are still waiting. And Sam Bankman-Fried is serving 25 years in a federal prison. Subscribe to the Scam Ledger. Every week we investigate a new fraud, a new collapse, a new moment when the mask finally came off. The next one might be even bigger.